Hey YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about finances, just getting started and some tips about how to be on your way to the road to financial independence. Okay, we'll go with the most obvious first tip, and the first tip is to get a part-time job or side hustle. I think the greatest thing that a student can do is work in addition. Why do you go to school? Okay, half of it is to learn, but I think the other half is to make sure that you're qualified to work one day so that you can make money and feed yourself, find a place to live, and contribute to society. If you work while you study it, you gain that experience that real jobs in the future are going to ask you for. My parents did a really good job of instilling in us that hard work will be paid off when young. When my mom was able to, we got allowances when we were kids. Like we'd have to do a bunch of chores around the house every single week, and if we did all of our chores correctly, if we did our laundry and everything went well, we would get something like, I don't know, $10 or $20 a week. Then financial crisis of 2008 hit. My stepdad lost his job, and that put an end to that pretty quickly. But I still wanted to work, and I was okay with working because my mom had instilled it in me that working was, a normal thing from young. So what did I do? When the crisis hit and I was in about middle school and things were going downhill for my family, I started babysitting for family members and stuff. And they would pay me I don't know, again, $10 an hour to watch my cousins or something like that. I was one of those kids at 10 or 11 or 12 that I wasn't going to do anything for anybody unless they paid me. And so that was the start of little working Tia. Then we get to high school and I start to get more real jobs. I was camp counselor for a while, which wasn't paid hourly, but I got a stipend. And I think it was I don't know, a couple $100s of a stipend. I kept doing little odd jobs like that and little paid internships up until my junior year. I got two big breaks. One was I was working at the bank. I told you guys that a bunch of times. My high school had a partnership with a local bank in town, and they would have every year an internship where students, 5 students, could work at different functions in the bank, from IT to management. And so I had got that, and that was really amazing because it was, even though it was an internship, it was a real job. We were getting paid $9 an hour, which at the time was amazing. It was cool to work at the bank. It felt like my first real job. And while I was working at the bank from 8 to 4 p.m., I said, why don't I get another job? And so what did I do? I sent out a bunch of job applications everywhere, and I got hired at Burger King. So it was really an interesting dynamic working at the bank by day. I had to get dressed up and work in, kind of private sector, not exactly corporate America, but in the banking sector. And then I would get into my broke down little car and drive across town to go put on my uniform and go work at Burger King until 10 p.m. at night. But those were my first 2 jobs, and it really felt nice to make my own money. Every week I was getting a paycheck, and I knew that was money I could do whatever I wanted with. It was mine. I didn't have to depend on my parents, and I was also helping my parents out because my parents were in a tough position. My dad didn't have a job, and my mom was taking on everything by herself, and I didn't want to be another burden to them. So I started working, and this work would go on to pay off so much later on in life. This work would be the beginning of my savings, which would be a huge help when I would go on to move to Italy. I worked all that summer, and I made some investments for school. I paid for prom. I bought my laptop, my MacBook, because I knew that I was going to need a decent computer for university. I bought some stuff for the YouTube channel because I had, the extra stuff. And after all of that, I still had $3,000 left, and I went to Italy with that $3,000. Another tip that I would say that goes along with this, apart from getting a side job or side hustle, I would say to open a bank account. What's the point? First of all, if you open a bank account, there are different types of bank accounts you can open, and the most common for us young people would be a checking account, and a savings account. A savings account is an account that you put money in, and either there's a minimum limit to it, or you can't take money out of it a certain amount of times. There are limits to make sure that money stays in that account, and you earn interest on that money that's in that account. Maybe you'll make the interest is not so high. Maybe you'll be making a couple pennies every year, but you're accruing something. And it's also a detriment. It forces you to not spend your money because it's in that savings account that you can't really touch. So that's one. And then a checking account. A checking account is usually required for most jobs, at least in America, because most jobs pay you via direct deposit. You give them your bank account information, and every week the money just goes automatically in there. So a lot of companies won't pay you unless you have a bank account, so you need to get one. I love bank accounts because there's something about having the money not physically in front of your face that makes it I don't want to spend it. If I have 20 euros in my hand, I'm going to spend it on something. If I have 20 euros in my pocket, I'm going to spend it on something. I'm going to see something I want. I'm going to say, hey, I have this 20 euros in my hand, and I'm going to spend it. Whereas if it's in the bank, it's a mental thing. Like, I don't feel the desire to spend it, and I usually don't. So I think that another huge tip would be to get a bank account. So typically, I only have a checking account. I don't have a savings account because, I don't know, setting up a bank account, whether it be savings or checking, is super helpful in terms of like saving money and getting off on the right foot. Another tip that I'd say is make a budget and stick to it. You need to have a list of all your expenses that you need to pay every single month and make sure that you're making more than that, or at least that. If you make at least that, then you will be paying all of your bills and you'll be fine. But if you make more than that, you'll have money to spend and money to save. It's really important to visualize these things because a lot of the time, if you're not organized in your head with the amount of money that you have to pay, you might go overboard. You might not have enough money to pay everything you need. And also, if you visualize it, you'll see the things that are totally necessary and the things that are unnecessary, and you'll be able to cut the things that are unnecessary and just focus on the things that are necessary. There are a bunch of great apps that can help you with this. Like, one I used to use in high school was called Mint, and it actually like connected to your bank account and could see every one of your transactions, and it would, from the transactions, it would put it in category, whether it be like food, miscellaneous, fitness, fun. So like every month I would say, okay, I want to spend just this amount on fitness. I just want to spend just this amount on food. And it would tell me if I was going overboard, and it would tell me if I was like, if I had money in the savings. Visualizing your budget and actually managing it and sticking to it is a huge way to save yourself some money, because you'd be surprised when we're not thinking about it, we spend so much money randomly a caso that we don't need to be spending, and we could be saving if we would just visualize it. One example of this is try going to the grocery store without a budget, without a list, a shopping list, and see how much you spend. And then try again with a set budget and a set list of things you need and see how much you spend. Every time I have on my calculator 20 euros and I like make sure I spend within 20 euros, like I subtract. Every time I pick something up, I subtract the price from 20 euros up until I get to zero. I find that I'm able to buy enough food to last me for that week, and I stay underneath 20 euros. But if I go in there and I just buy all the things that I think I need, I always go over 20 euros. So these are the little like mind tricks you have to like play with yourself in order to, save more money. Another tip I would say, which is one of the most important, is just self-control. We just don't control ourselves. I'm guilty of this as well. Like, our friends will invite us out to aperitivo, and you have so many friends, and if you don't control yourself, you'll be going out to aperitivo every single night. And of course, aperitivo seems cheap. Aperitivo is 10 euros, but if you go out every night, that's 50 euros if you're going during the week, and 70 euros if you're going during the weekend. Do you really need that new shirt that you're about to spend 20 euros on? Do you really need those new shoes that you're about to spend money on? Like, a lot of the times you just need to like tell yourself, I don't need this and I need to control myself. Just tell your friends, like, I'm actually gonna stay in tonight. I went to aperitivo yesterday. Like, you just need to control yourself. It's hard, I know, but that's another way to save a lot of money. My last huge tip is to take the help when you need it, and when it's like there for you. And that might sound counterintuitive, like, how is accepting money from my parents going to help me become financially stable? Well, the point is, like, there's a certain amount of time where I think it's totally okay for parents to support their kids, and one of those time periods is college. If your parents are offering to pay your rent and offering to pay your school fees, don't be an idiot. Like, don't like torture yourself. Accept that help, and while you're getting that help, work your ass off. Because if you don't have to pay tuition and you don't have to pay rent, you really only have to pay for like transportation, food sometimes, and your phone. And most of the time parents pay those things anyways. If you don't have any costs and you're just getting money in, that's the key to savings. I was really lucky because even though my parents themselves couldn't help me out, I had scholarships. I had a scholarship that paid for my tuition, and I had a scholarship that partially paid for like my housing. And so with all the money I was making on YouTube, with all the money I was making from like English tutoring, I was able to save a large majority of that. And that's become super helpful because now I have a really nice savings, no debt. It gives me the freedom to do what I want. Financial freedom is the most amazing thing. Not having to depend on somebody and not having to worry about your next paycheck or your next bill is so amazing. And I can't stress the beauty of having savings and just something to fall back on. I'm not saying savings to spend because I usually don't touch my savings, but just savings to give you that kind of security. So you know that if something happens tomorrow, you're fine. One way to get to this point is by having help. I mean, I don't know how, I wouldn't have been able to save as much if I had to pay for school, if I had to take out loans, if I had to pay for my rent. And I see a lot of kids that think that, I don't know, it's bad to ask their parents for stuff, but it's not. That's what parents are there for. When I have kids, I'm going to help them. I'm going to want to help them. And I know that my parents, if they had the resources to have been able to help me, they would have helped me. They help my brothers and sisters now that they have the resources to help them, thanks to the fact that, I mean, I don't want to say thanks to the fact, but I'm sure that the fact that I was super independent helped them to save money for my younger brothers and sisters. And they helped my younger brothers and sisters. Take all the help that you can get, because there are some people that don't have any help at all, and it really makes things like a million times harder. Don't be ashamed. I'm not saying like ask your parents for everything. I'm not saying to have your parents pay your rent and then not like just sit on the couch and leech off of them. I'm still saying to work, but I'm just saying you don't need to reject help that's there for you. Those are pretty much my tips for financial stability and just like saving up money. Some people ask like, how did I get started in Italy? Like, how did I open a bank account and stuff? Well, when you go to a school in Italy, usually the schools give you like a bank account or a student card that functions as a bank card. So I had that. My school gave me a tax ID, a codice fiscale. And they also gave me the ability to use my student card as a bank account. So that's what I've been using. I haven't had to like go out and open an actual Italian bank account. If you are going to school here, you should be able to open a bank account. If you're not going to school here and you're just like living here, if you have a permesso di soggiorno, so you're going to be living here for a while, you will be able to go to the revenue agency and ask for a codice fiscale. And with that codice fiscale, you'll be able to do other things like ask for the residenza in whatever city you're staying in. And once you have the residenza and the codice fiscale, you should be able to open bank accounts. It's a little bit like complicated for Americans because there are tax implications that come with us, and there are literally some banks that will not open accounts for Americans because of our international like tax implications, but they're not every bank. You just have to find a bank that will accept Americans and use them. When I came to Italy, I didn't work at first. I came with $3,000 in my pocket, I came with $3,000 in cash, and I put that all in the Italian bank account. And for the first 4 months, it was really scary. Like, I'd never been in a position, like I said, I worked all through high school. And even before working in high school, like I did like little odd jobs. I'd never felt the feeling of not having the ability to work and not being able to support myself and give myself that security. So the first 3 months were super scary and really like hard. I was really pinching pennies. And then like I went home for Christmas, and on the plane going home for Christmas, there was this other lady that was American, and we ended up like starting to talking, and she was an English teacher, and she's the one that told me that I should be doing like private lessons, and I could charge this and I could make that. And like I took her advice, and when I came back, that's when I started doing English tutoring, and English tutoring helped so much. I was making like 20 euros an hour for the private lessons, and when I worked at schools, I was working making like 17 euros an hour. Like I was making a decent amount of money, and it allowed me to maybe work like 5 hours a week, which is nothing, and make like enough to cover the rent that my scholarship didn't cover, buy my food, pay for my transportation card, and maybe like save 100 or 200 at the end of every month. And over time, like, the more I started to work, the more I started to save. And also, like, YouTube helped a lot, because once I started getting bigger YouTube checks, like, those just went right to my savings. I really didn't spend any of the money that I've earned on YouTube, really. Not really. I try not to touch that money, and it just contributed to my savings. So that was pretty much how I got started in Italy, because you guys were asking for that specifically. Find a job that you can do. If you're an American, do English tutoring. If you're an Italian and you're decent at some kind of school subject, you can do any other kind of tutoring. Like, I know people that make about the same amount of money as me tutoring kids in like physics and math or history or Latin. There's a huge demand for tutors, and I think that's the perfect job for a student in Italy. I don't want this video to be too long. I hope you guys found it useful. Let me know if you want any other videos like this, where I give you kind of like financial advice and talk about like finances. I'd love to share what I've learned. And yeah, hope you guys like this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Mwah.